thank you very much for the opportunity for coming and speaking in relation to Carmi Community Children's Centre today. My apologies that I can't be with you there in person today. Unfortunately, it was just one of those things. My 14-year-old son is away on a leadership program for 10 weeks, and this weekend just happens to be the weekend that we get a chance to go and visit him and see him for the first time. So my apologies, I would have loved to have been there. However, we thought that this would be a little bit of a unique way to give you my view of the Carmi story. You will have already heard from both lovely Sally and Beck, who have been involved with Carmi for a very long time. My journey so far has been quite short. I joined the organisation 2.5 years ago. At that time, the organisation had just merged their standalone kinder and their long daycare centre. Their coordinator at the time had resigned 3 or 4 months prior, and there was an interim coordinator in whilst they were looking for the individual that ended up being me. So the organisation, and Beck's probably already shared with you that they wanted to put in place an operational manager. So let's talk about the start. So at the start, when I joined, we were operating on 2 different sites, a kinder site and a long daycare site. And even though there'd been some consolidation with staff and leadership meetings, we were still pretty much operating as a virtual hub, but very separate entities. Within a very short period of time, which wasn't great, but one of our employees injured herself and needed to take some time off extended leave. What that did it wasn't great for her, but it was the positive out of it for us as an organisation is that we were enabled to share some of the staffing and resources across the 2 sites. That was the start of the journey of merging our 2 workforces as such. About 3 months in, we also took on an additional service, which meant another site, and it was at the local primary school. We took on the vacation and after school care program. We had a long daycare service that had received a meeting requirements from the assessment. We had a kindergarten that was working towards but running absolutely superbly, and we had an OSH program that had received a working towards as well. So it was a pretty steep hill to climb. So we took a little bit of time to get to know each other. I listened, worked out how things worked, and then we tried to put in some processes in place. One of the things that I did find was that our employees, when I joined, had a great passion for working with the children. They were wonderful, wonderful educators, but many of them had been with our organisation for a long period of time. They'd only experienced our organisation. Some of them had been working for us for 10 odd years and had perhaps started with us as a junior and were very experienced educators, but their educational level for themselves had sort of plateaued. I'm a big advocate for professional development. The board were amazing in supporting that. Obviously, the grants for professional development certainly helped us be able to fund the situation. What we did was we invested in the people. The exciting thing out of our professional development is that we now have all of our staff, bar 3, I think it is, that are diploma qualified or only a month or 2 off completing their diplomas. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bachelor qualified employees across the service. And on top of those educational programs from a professional development, we've also engaged in visiting local services, but also visiting services in the city and having a look at how they operate as well. So we've done a couple of tours. We've had others get involved in trauma management, nutrition management, setting up engaging classrooms. We've implemented our Stephanie Alexander kitchen garden this year. That was one of our staff members' absolute passion, and so that's been wonderful to be able to realise that. So the professional development side of it is something that's really important to us as an organisation. Of course, we are in the business of education and educating children. When I first joined, there was a bit of a perception that the long daycare team were which I hate, carers or childcare or babysitters, and I absolutely hate that term, and that kinder was where the education happened. It's wonderful to now feel and see and look around the place and have all the staff feel that they are the educators too, and also believe that as well. And that's been a really big mind shift for all of us. The other thing that was interesting for me when I joined the organisation was that there was some, as I mentioned earlier, Cert 3 doesn't necessarily mean that you're not one of the most skilled educators in the service. And I could see that there was some people in the organisation that had some amazing capability, but perhaps sometimes weren't being heard because they weren't a room leader. So what I did, when one of my team members was heading away on maternity leave, we had 2 people interview for the room leader role, and as it turns out, we found it very difficult to decide between the 2. There were positives on both sides, and so we decided to approach them and see whether they might like to share the leadership role. And so what we did then was we actually broadened it across the room, and so the other staff within the room, we approached them to see whether they would share the leadership role and responsibility in the room. It was a really interesting experiment. The first time it didn't work so well. So we had 2 people with broad different experience, but they had great things to bring together and offer, but unfortunately they both still really wanted to be the room leader. The reasoning for the shared leadership model was so that everyone gets an opportunity to show their strengths. Also, it means that everyone takes responsibility for the welfare, the safety, the education, and all the jobs that happen in an early education program. And also implemented that at an educational leader level. With our 3 bachelor qualifieds, we engaged them in a shared leadership model from an educational leader. It was really interesting when we had our assessment because the assessor questioned us at the end to say, I had to ring the department and just check whether you were allowed to have more than 1 educational leader. As it turns out, you can. And she asked us how it works, and initially the girls were a bit nervous because traditionally, we'd stepped out of what was the regular world. And so they all looked at me and I said, okay, well, I'll explain. The reason that we engaged in the shared leadership model for the educational leaders was because I felt that each of these ladies had a lot to offer, but they were all coming from very different backgrounds, and I thought that only as a service would we benefit from that by utilising their knowledge and experience. The assessor then went on to have a chat to each of the educators and ask them their backgrounds and experience skills. Those 3 people, the assessor was very impressed with the girls' answers. At the end of that assessment, we were ecstatic. It was really lovely to see that opportunity of shared leadership to be one of the things that was questioned and that stood up in the assessment. So I'm really proud of the girls for being successful in that area. I mentioned at the start of my presentation that we change is constant here, and so in those 2 years we've been preparing as a virtual hub and as a virtual team for our big move to our brand new building. You will have heard and seen about that from Sally and Beck. So the people side of that is that with the shared leadership model, we moved to this new building, which is amazing, with the shared leadership model intact. Then the move. So pre the move, everyone was nervous. It was a challenging time. We were finishing up at Christmas last year and we were moving back into a new building in the new year. Many staff were heading on leave and they were away for the 5 weeks, and then they would start in their new place. We had close to 200 children and their families, 30 odd plus staff, all move into a new building, a new home, where not everything was where it had always been. We're now 4 months in, and it has been challenging for all of us. I just want to share a couple of the keys that to our success so far, which are openness, transparency, communicating, and that everyone is involved. I just wanted to share with you a couple of things that we have had happening within our organisation over the last few years. So we have regular visits to the local library. We have walking transition to the primary schools. We have maternal child and health visit our service, and now they live with us in our new service. We have the Carmi Alliance, which I'm pretty sure Sally will have spoken about. We have the local police, the CFA, the CWA ladies, working bees, Little Athletics come and do sessions with our children. We have our parent helpers. We have the secondary college and the TAFEs, so work experience, Duke of Edinburgh experience for the local secondary students, also volunteers and placements, whether it just be across to the local primary school to watch the sports, or down to the centre TAF to contribute in the Remembrance Day. Or this week, one of the groups is heading up to the local elderly hostel to meet with the residents and do some singing and games. The other component is that we have formal involvement. 2 of our team have been involved in the first 1,000 Days program over these last 3 months, and we're really looking forward to the implementation of their group's project. They were linked with a group of people from Uniting Care, Berry Street, the local council, local libraries themselves, and I've probably forgotten 1 or 2, and apologies if I have. So community for us is really important. We're rural, and that's who we are. And you will have seen our, Beck would have already spoken about our strategic plan is linked to the community, and we always ask for feedback from the community as well. Okay, lastly, where to from here? Well, like I said, it's not finished by any realm of the imagination. We're wanting to continue our consolidation of knowledge and sharing knowledge. PD, professional development, is still is high on our agenda. Also, the inclusion of other services. We have meeting rooms and service rooms that others can use. We have Uniting Care, who run a wonderful women's program here at the moment, and we have our mothers groups here as well. We have visiting specialists. The growth of the capability across the organisation is really important to us as well. So in the staff, in the children, in the families, and in the community. Our focus is lifelong learning, and it's about helping all people within the community from birth to the aged, contributing and being part of our organisation. So we're not perfect yet, and if we were perfect, I'd be really worried, because I believe that we continue learning no matter what we do. So I think with that, I might pass back to Beck and Sally, who will just answer any questions. So thank you very much for the opportunity today.